Born sometime 9 to 10 years ago, was a little girl with pink hair, raised by a single and sickly mother. Despite her nature, she would raise Encore alone and give her all the love she possibly could, telling her stories and turning what Encore did while they played into the adventures of the Woolie Warrior. Encore had a deep attachment to her, and also to the Woolies her mother used to help tell the stories. These two stuffed toys named Cosmos and Cloudy would later on become integral to her own identity. However, for the time being, in little Encore's life, her real name unknown to me, she was joyous. Time with her mother meant a lot to her, so when Encore's mother fell sick and became worse and worse and eventually unresponsive, it hurt her deeply. Encore, being a child, had little idea of what to do, of if she could make her mom feel happier and better. In Encore's mind, she was always Cloudy, always the white one, the princess, and her mother, the knight, the one to save her and keep her safe. However, now her hero was unresponsive. The shining beacon of hope, of love, is fading away. She thought that if she worked hard, did everything she could, and was as good a girl as possible, that her mother would get better. This roughly 6-year-old girl at the time loved her mother so dearly and deeply that she would do anything for her. However, eventually she would hear voices in her head, voices no one else could hear. Resonance abilities, often called a forte, are based on the unconscious mind, and often awakened during traumatic events. The death of your mother, at only 5 years of age, the death of your hero, the person you cherish the most. Oh, the pain of losing your whole world without any way to understand. How the pain of it all must have been deeply traumatic for little Encore. Little Encore, however, listened to these voices. She recognized them, and how could she not? The black one, Cosmos, sounded like a mixture of her mother's voice, but also her own. The white one, however, was like her own voice, but incomprehensible at the same time. However, they both still had a sense of her mother within them both, a sense of familiarity yet alien as well. This is because Encore's forte allows her to feel the emotions of those around her, causing her to be a deeply empathetic individual and likely driving more confusion her way. These voices begged her and cried out to her. The same word began being repeated to her. "Encore! Encore!" they said in unison. Cloudy, the fearful, afraid, and representative of her desires to be a princess, to be the one saved, the one who is fearful, her deepest and darkest fears, the depths of her psyche. This one did not want to leave, a mixture of herself and her mother. No, she was certain now. Cloudy was her mother. Was her mom afraid of dying? Of leaving Encore behind, alone? Desperate and fearful of leaving a 6-year-old girl behind in a world of tragedy, suffering, and non-stop decay? What mother wouldn't fear such things? Cosmos, however, was the more excited one. Their roles have shifted. Now Encore must be the knight. She must be the one to continue on the story, to say it, to be the brave and strong knight, like her mother was to her. Encore, however, did have some family members, perhaps an aunt and a grandparent or more. They were there at her mother's grave, forced to watch as her mother was turned nothing more into a box, and then placed underground, buried, never to be seen again. Just like how curtains close at a stage and cover the actor. Just a silent, hollow feeling of a black void in your chest. She, however, would run away from the grave, running as fast as her little legs would carry her until she came across the theater her mother performed at, locking herself inside and sitting on a stage alone in a dark, unlit room with no story. However, what she found instead was a sea of flowers. Amid the flowers, she saw her mother's figure shining bright and igniting a feeling in Encore's heart, giving Encore hope. She cried out for her mother, crying along the way, stumbling towards the stage, reaching out, tears in her eyes, trying to hold her, trying to hug her one last time, but before she could touch her, before she could reach her and who and what she is, she was ripped away, torn by tendrils into a deep dark abyss. No show, just dimmed lights, and the curtains closed. However, that hope sparked something within little Encore. Cosmos and Cloudy spoke in unison again, shouting, "Encore! Encore!" Yet again. If her mother was gone, then at the very least, she can continue the show. She can bring the smiles to people, to joy and laughter of others. The warmth of her mother's smile and hugs to cherish and live. The story is, in a way, a message, a letter of love to her mother. She can be the encore of her story after all. Are kids not an encore of your own life? While staying as a child, never growing up is of course due to this traumatic event. The refusal to let go of stories and move on. And an odd twist of fate, this tragic, emotional, and mental block showcases a deep strength. Encore would be the brave Woollie Knight. After all, life is just a story, so why not live a life you want? Why not don the role you desire and write the pages yourself? Oh, how beautiful a tragedy leads to embracing the indomitable human spirit. She, however, can't travel the world. She can't go and save the princess because, of course, Encore is still both princess and knight in her fractured mind. She would be sent to an orphanage, her family members not wanting to deal with her nor raise her. Of course, this makes sense. It's possible Cloudy and Cosmos were a handful to deal with. Perhaps they spew fire, the rage of sorrow and loss, or perhaps they didn't care about her at all, or perhaps they loved her dearly, but knew they wouldn't be good parents, and did what they thought was best. Whatever the case, she did not like the orphanage. She liked the other kids there and called them her friends, but it seems that part of her subconscious disliked it, calling Director Mama a big bad black cat. A stern face often came with meeting her. She, however, understood why Director Mama did the things she did, spoke the way she spoke, and acted how she did, as, of course, Encore's forte gives her a deep insight into people. While the details about the orphanage incident are scarce, when Encore was 9 years old, she ended up burning it down, solving a unique case there in the new Federation. However, in Encore's unconscious mind, she still shows up as a cat, a hurting cat, and even in those nightmares, she still offers compassion and a smile. This woman likely was turned into a tacit discord or overclocked. Perhaps it was an orphanage for young resonators, which would be nice, but it is of no surprise organizations such as the Pioneer Association and the Black Shores are interested in resonators who awaken their abilities young. Perhaps Encore didn't awaken her abilities all at once, and the orphanage incident, which she calls the Candy House, finished the awakening process and allowed her Woolies to spit fire and save everyone there, and allowed those little horns on her head to grow when using her abilities in a deeper manner. The incident caused Tethys to become aware and issue a command to ask her to join the Black Shores to save the world. As Encore was born in the new Federation, it was naturally Aalto who would approach her. Their conversation was rather short, and Encore came to like Aalto, calling him an uncle because he looked old. The two would form a close bond together, with both Encore and Aalto eventually playing games and outdoing each other's high scores, with the two of them creating various different stories together so Aalto can accomplish his missions. Of course, Encore doesn't really like Aalto's stories and calls them wholly unbelievable, but she still smiles when they work. However, Encore now gets to live the life she wanted because, as Aalto said, it is all to save the world. Her time in the Black Shores would prompt her to attempt cooking, which resulted in some very unique dishes, such as a unique variant of starflakes, but also something she calls a coral bowl. However, one of her most cherished treasures comes from Aalto, and it's a little box with him in it. One that sings a little birthday song. She loves to play it on everyone's birthday, even Camelia's. Encore would also make friends with Werina, where Werina is the older one and nicknamed Encore as Little Encore because they play house together. And a good thing too, because Encore has a habit of trying to eat mushrooms, even if she doesn't know if they're poisonous or good. Encore's life is that of telling stories, of being the great Woolie Warrior that saves people both with her woolies, but also with her stories. The core of both, of course, being hope itself. For what is the antithesis of the lament, of despair itself, if not hope? And what better showcase of hope than that of a little, frail child with a big heart and two very protective woolies? Encore, however, must be careful. While she can understand people on a deep level and feel their pain, her greatest power comes from the opposite, of people understanding her and believing in her and feeling her stories. Encore is one of those rare individuals who can create a sonarosphere, but it requires other people believing in Encore's story to fully function. The less you believe in her, the less you trust her, the less you feel for her stories, the weaker she gets. Much like her own mother, much like the very story of Encore herself embodies, because Encore is the last of the Woolie Warriors, and without hope, without love, kindness, and compassion, without stories to bring those feelings into reality, eventually, the Woolies will fade away too. A lot of hope and care is on her shoulders. Such a little girl, at least 9 years old, probably 10 or 11, bearing the weight and emotions of others. Encore's power might be limited, not as potent and flashy as Cristoforo or Frolova's, nor as ethereal as Shorekeeper, but nevertheless, admirable. Encore is deserving the title of the Great Encore, of the Great Woolie Warrior, because she holds enough strength to embark on a journey of hope. When the world gave her reason to fear, when the world gave her reason to hate, to fall victim to despair, Encore chose the hard path, the path of hope, the path of her mother, and most importantly, the path of the Woolie Warrior. And what of her powers? Her powers are in essence that of hope, kind of. Completely powerless unless she believes in herself and others believe in her. As the story has more faith, parts of it can become real in her sonarosphere. However, most impressively enough, if it deals with her story, then little bits of the Woolies themselves can make clouds and parts of the story real in the real world. It's like looking at a weaker, or perhaps just a less refined version of Cristoforo's power, one who takes stories and uses them for tragedy and suffering, and another who takes those stories and uses them for hope and happiness for others. Though, in truth, I think the two have some overlap with each other. Will the Woolie Warrior be able to understand Cristoforo and perhaps convince him of her own story? Or will the Woolie Warrior be another victim in a never-ending sea of tragedies, failure, despair, and death? But what about you? Do you believe in this tale of Encore of the Woolie Warrior? If so, then applaud her as she bows and once again asks, or perhaps demand, Encore, Encore. Encore, however, is not wholly powerful. She cannot stand alone, not even in her dreams. Encore still is deeply troubled. Some of her friends tell her that Cosmos and Cloudy are imaginary, that they're not real, and she often asks Rover for comfort. She is still deeply hurting still, wanting to see her mommy in her dreams, and eventually she did, but she also makes her favorite food, something that she learned from Aalto, and despite how they sound, Encore does view Aalto as a sort of family to her. And inside of Encore's scenario, we see something very familiar. We see the Shorekeeper and Rover's flower within it. Either Tethys helps her power, or perhaps she sees the Shorekeeper like the mother of everyone there. After all, Rover did say that the Black Shores is like a family. I guess that makes Camellia the problem sibling or crazy aunt then. While traveling and fighting together, Encore reached a new level of power, growing closer to Rover and calling Rover's abilities Rover Magic. But most importantly, Encore said as long as they're together, Rover's story won't have a bad ending. Rover and Encore would make a pinky promise, becoming best friends. Encore perhaps might be more broken than Warina was, more fractured and fallen into a delusion, into a story, a fairy tale. However, with her friends by her side, her stories become real, or at least real enough to make a change in someone's heart. But what about your heart? With Encore's stories and her super powerful Woolie Warriors, what feelings do they bring you? Do you believe in the Woolie Warrior? Do you believe these tales, these stories, and do you feel them? Will you make a pinky promise with Encore? And remember, for every daily you miss in this game, that's a day where Encore doesn't see you and tells you a story. That's a day you break your promise to her. That's a day that Encore sits there alone in that dark void, cold, thinking to herself, where is Rover to tell stories to? Why isn't he here today? So to bring her out, to make her smile and happy, let's say it again in unison. Encore! Encore! Special thanks to Takoyaki Lover, Wolfmaster256, Icy Sincere 13, and Frosty Frog OG for making these videos possible. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.